My name is Morgan Reynolds. I'm a professor emeritus at Texas A&M University and the former chief economist under George W. Bush 2001-2002. Yes, a Republican appointee. I've also worked for a think tank in Dallas called the National Center for Policy Analysis. I have 3 degrees from the great University of Wisconsin at Madison, and was invited up recently to give a 9/11 talk, and my theme was, President Bush, come out with your hands up. You're under arrest. The people demand your trial for treason on 9/11. On 9/11, I'd been 1 week on the job in the Bush administration. It started on September 4, and I didn't know about 9/11 until my son emailed me from Kansas City, of all places, and said, "Dad, are you getting out of the building?" I said, "What is he talking about?" I went to an office 3 doors away. I saw the television on. I saw black smoke billowing out of a tower, and I said, pointed to it, "That building will not fall." Count on an economist for a quick and easy prediction. That the rest of the day I spent, or half a day, trying to get across the river back to my apartment in Alexandria. And then when I learned that the towers both had turned to dust, I said, how can that happen? I don't get it. I was wrong, and so many people were wrong. I put it on the back burner, never thinking that the Bush administration could have been involved or commit the atrocities of 9/11. I worked for nearly 16 more months before I resigned. And then, when they invaded Iraq, I knew it was on big lies. Everybody in town, meaning Washington, D.C., really knew it. They wouldn't own up to it or do anything about it. They're cowards or traitors or both. And I said, geez, if they're going to lie their way into a war in the Middle East, what else would they lie about? And that started me thinking right away about 9/11. I started searching around. So during the course of 2003, I learned they'd done it. And by the time I read David Ray Griffin's The New Pearl Harbor, I said, wow, David's done it right. He's put it together in a way that appealed to me as an academic, and the rest is history. I first began to suspect that 9/11 was an inside job in March of 2003 when the Bush-Cheney government invaded Iraq. Prior to that, I just watched the Bush administration make a series of policy decisions that I was opposed to, beginning with the tariffs on steel. I'm a free market economist, explains that. And the horrible legislation on restricting campaign spending and a whole series of things I didn't like, and firing Paul O'Neill, for example, who's an honorable man, a former Secretary of the Treasury, etc. So I was ready to leave after 1 year, but for personal reasons stayed on another 4 months, so I left January 3, 2003. And then during the year of 2003, I had time on my hands. I could pursue whatever issue I wanted to as a research scholar. What's more important than 9/11? Here's we'll call it the moderate but ugly take on the whole administration. The whole focus was to re-elect George W. Bush. Every calculation was short-term political smarts. I never was in a room with a conversation about what was the best policy for the country. And then once we decide that, what's the best way to sell it? It was always about re-electing the president. It was craven. It was about George W. Bush avoiding the heirs of Poppy and being re-elected, because it was just a crushing thing for Poppy not to be re-elected. One of the things that amuses me is that the wimp charge was going to be avoided at all costs. So the George W. Bush bow-legged swagger, all Texan, it's all buckle, it's all hat, and no ranch, no cattle. It's so affected. Just his strut. The biggest smoking gun then and now is WTC-7. How can anyone watch it without some kind of a psyop or verbiage accompanying it and not look at that and say, hey, that building was just demolished, just the way the Las Vegas Sands was, or the Seattle Stadium, etc. there's no way around that. Here we are in so-called broad daylight. It's 5:20 p.m. and we've got cameras on it. And what other explanation can there be for this very conventional-looking collapse when under 7 seconds? That just has crime, inside job written all over it. And that was the first thing that struck me was it's always about New York City, the World Trade Center. What happened there? How could this have been accomplished by Anya? It's Osama and 19 young Arabs. It can't be. Well, you could argue that it was a compact number of conspirators, but it's the most fantastic, it's the most ludicrous. And as Jim Garrison, the former district attorney of New Orleans, wrote in his book on JFK called On the Trail of the Assassins, the story did not wear well. The whole lone assassin theory about Lee Oswald killing the president when it was a military-style hit, it was an in-your-face, very much like 9/11. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. You people are nobody. We are everybody. So it's not going to wear well. Garrison pointed out that only a minority of Americans initially doubted the government story, but by 1967, only 4 years later, 2 out of 3, according to national polls, doubted the official lone assassin theory. We have the same process underway on 9/11. The story is so ridiculous it's not going to wear well. It's not wearing well already. Hubris is their weak point. When you're on top this many generations in some cases where it runs in families, witness our current president, when you're on top, when money comes that easy, when you're not, you don't really identify with the struggles of ordinary people. Katrina, the post-events there, might have changed some journalists' minds about how cavalier people at the top of our government are about American lives. The casualness, the coldness of FEMA there outed them a bit. And now, of course, we have all the evidence we need to show that they lied their way into a major war, and well over 100,000 people have been killed. So the coldness, the hubris, the arrogance, it's a human fallibility or fault or vice to just overplay your hand, ultimately. There's almost no prudence in what they're doing. It's not gone as smoothly as they expected because, number one, their cover story is weak. They have the complicity, number two, of the corporate media, yet mostly silencio rather than errors of commission, even though we get leaked breakthroughs every once in a while, like Charlie Sheen. But the overall thing that I point to is the Internet. Here we have these high-tech professional killers involved, and yet they severely underestimated the power of the Internet. We wouldn't be here today meeting in Chicago if it weren't for the Internet, I don't believe. And we have there's too many sharp people, some of them in this room, who are just waiting to pounce on them. It's hard for them to manufacture evidence after the fact because we've kicked them on every substantive account. We're going to have a debate. We have a debate scheduled coming up here September 16 with the scholars represented by me and 6 others, including David Ray Griffin and Phil Berg and Jim Fetzer. And I don't expect the other side to show. So we're just going to put up mannequins and put little cartoon bubbles above them about what their answer is. See 9/11 Commission. See 9/11 Commission for fictional story about what happened. So they just refused to debate. We saw that when Alex Jones turned up the Charlie Sheen story, and by the 3rd night they had to shut it down because for one reason, they couldn't get anybody respectable to take the government side. We can prove our analysis. We can prove that the government story is false. And we have a philosophical proposition we can repair to, namely, you cannot prove a lie. So they cannot prove what they contend.